Hi guys, today our learning intention is to be able to list outcomes using tree diagrams. Let's remind ourselves of all of the different ways that we can list outcomes of an event. A list or a set of possible outcomes in an experiment is called a sample space. There are different ways of finding elements in a sample space. So far we have looked at systematic listing. For example, a standard 6-sided die is thrown. List all the possible outcomes. Let's see if you got this right. All of our possible outcomes, if I roll a dice, are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We write all of the possible outcomes inside curly brackets. Our other way to list possible outcomes is with two-way tables. For example, Emma has a choice of pizza and fish or chicken for her main course. She can choose either juice or water to drink. List all of the possible meals that she could order. In our first column, we put all of the possible choices for her main course. And in the first row, we put all of the possible choices for her drink. We then fill in the rest of the two-way table by taking a value from a row and the value from the column. For example, our outcomes are pizza and juice, chicken and juice, fish and juice, or pizza and water, chicken and water, fish and water. Today we're looking at our third way of listing out possible outcomes. This is called a tree diagram. For example, a coin is flipped twice, giving a head or a tail, and we want to show the possible outcomes. To do this, we draw our first branch of our tree, which shows the possible outcomes for your first flip. We could flip a head or a tail. And then from these outcomes, we look at the possible outcomes for your second flip. If I got a head in my first flip, I can get a head or a tail in my second flip. If I have a tail in my first flip, I can have a head or a tail for my second flip. We combine the branches to find our possible outcomes. Our possible outcomes are head and head, head and tail and head, or tail and tail. Let's look at another example for tree diagrams. I have a bag of counters, 3 blue and 7 red. I pick a counter out and then put it back into the bag. I then pick a second counter. What are all of the possible outcomes? So, the first time I pick a counter, I have two possible outcomes: red or blue. If I choose a red sweet, for my second outcome, I have two possible outcomes: red or blue again. If I choose a blue counter, for my second sweet, I have two outcomes. I can choose a red or a blue. All of my possible outcomes are red and red, or red and a blue sweet, or blue and a red sweet, or blue and a blue sweet. The branches represent our possible outcomes. Our first branch represents our first event, and our second branch represents our second event. Let's look at another example. I place a bet on an outcome of 2 football matches. Complete the tree diagram below. What are all of the possible outcomes of these two matches? In the first match, the team can either win or lose. I have two branches, my branch for winning and my branch for losing. For my second match, what are all of the possible outcomes? Well, if I won the first match, I have two outcomes for the second match. I can either win or lose. If I lost the first match, I have two outcomes for the second match. I can either win or lose again. All of the possible outcomes of this match are: I could win and win, or I could win and lose, or I could lose and win, or I could lose and lose. These are all of the possible outcomes of playing two matches. To find your possible outcomes, you combine your branches together. Let's try one more. I flip two coins. Draw a tree diagram to show the possible outcomes. Can you do this one yourself? Please pause the video and try this example. So, on my first flip, I have two possible outcomes, heads and tails. On my second flip, or my second coin, what are my possible outcomes? Well, if I got heads on my first coin, for my second coin, I have two possible outcomes, heads or tails. And if I got tails on my first coin, on my second coin, I have two possible outcomes again, heads or tails. Here's my tree diagram. Let's write down all of the possible outcomes. To find your possible outcomes, you combine your branches. I could have a head and a head. Or I could have a head and a tail. Or I could flip a tail and then a head. Or I could flip a tail and then a tail. If you have not done so already, please ensure that you take down this example and list all of the possible outcomes.